Hey guys, humiliating Reaper here. So it's that time of the week. I'm outside the cinema, and I'm as shocked as you when I'm saying this, but I'm about to head in to see Kraven the Hunter. Yeah, this has been delayed so long. The fact that I'm actually about to see it is insane. It'll probably end up delaying it like another year by the time I'm sat in my seat, but hey ho, I'm here. I'm about to see it. The trailer supposed to look alright, you know, promising brutal violence, Aaron Taylor Johnson on the hunt. So hopefully this should at least be a little better than Morbius and Madam Web. There's only one way to find out. Get in, get my snacks, get seated for Kraven the Hunter. So it's got my popcorn here and some red frozen Fanta, colour of the blood that Kraven will spill, ready for the final film in the SPUMC. So yeah, Kraven the Hunter. I am back from seeing it. Of course, this is being billed as the final installment in the Sony Pictures universe of Marvel characters, following on from humiliating failures like Morbius and Madam Web. I actually had some level of hope going into this because this is directed by JC Chandor, who's directed movies like Margin Call and A Most Violent Year, so an actual proper director who's made, you know, well-respected movies. So I have my fingers crossed. Also, thanks to the promise of, you know, being a brutal, violent, R-rated action flick, you know, something I can just switch my brain off, enjoy a bit of mindless violence, which is something that surely not even the creative genius of Avi Arad could spoil, right? Right? But does it end the universe on a bang or just another humiliating whimper? Let's find out. The film follows Sergei Kravenov, who lives with his half-brother Dmitri in fear of their gangster father, Nikolai, who instills in the boys a mindset of never showing weakness. One day, Nikolai takes the boys out for a hunting trip, and Sergei is soon viciously mauled by a lion and is brought back to life through a magic elixir, which gives him superhuman abilities, which he uses to become the greatest hunter alive, Kraven, making a list of powerful men just as bad as his father and hunting them down. But Kraven soon faces his ultimate test when he comes into the crosshairs of Alexei Sitsevich, aka the Rhino. So obviously Sony has set the bar very low with Madam Web, which is, you know, one of the funniest train wrecks of a film I think I've seen in quite some time. Just, you know, so utterly incompetent that it's kind of hilarious to watch. Now, I can breathe a sigh of relief when I say that Craven is a lot better than Madam Web. Again, the bar was in hell to begin with, but yeah, it does clear it, thankfully. Although some of the pitfalls that have dogged this franchise are there, and they do hold this back from being as great as it could have been. Now, obviously, where this really stands out from Morbius and Madam Web is in the action. It's, you know, very well done. Some really entertainingly staged set pieces, whether it be, you know, an opening scene in which Kraven infiltrates a prison to take out a high power inmate, or a standout scene in the middle where Kraven on barefoot chases a car full of baddies through the streets of London, or, you know, the big climactic confrontation with the Rhino. You know, it's all very entertainingly done, and obviously what helps that is the brutal R-rated violence. You know, Kraven's like deploying bear traps, putting people's heads in them. You know, he's deploying like knives and spears and crossbows. At one point, just straight up bites a guy's nose off. It's all very, very well done and very entertaining to watch. I just wish the story around these action scenes was much stronger because, yeah, it's kind of weak. In a nutshell, it's an origin story and a kind of oddly structured one at that. Characters pop up with little to no motivation. Really the strongest on that front are Kraven himself and Dimitri. Some motivations just established straight up way too late in the game to actually mean anything, so it's hard to properly get invested in a lot of these characters. Also, not helping matters is the very inconsistent pacing. It starts off very strong with obviously those first 8 minutes, which Sony have made available to view online. But from there, we obviously have to flash back to show how Kraven got his powers, which goes on for a good 20 minutes and really grinds the pace to a halt before we can actually move the story forward. The editing is very weird, some just weird, abrupt jump cuts that affect the flow of scenes, and some of the ADR as well. It's not as bad as in Madam Web, thankfully, but there are points where it really sticks out, that the tone and delivery of the dialogue does not at all match the footage on screen. It's absolutely hilarious. I will say, there are some good performances in here. I thought Aaron Taylor Johnson did a fairly good job. He's a very likable, sort of charismatic presence who can carry these sort of leading man roles effortlessly. And sure enough, he does. He is a good Kraven. You also have Fred Hackinger as Dimitri, who of course just recently graced our screens in Gladiator 2. I thought he did a good job, and obviously, if you know your Marvel Comics lore, you'll know exactly the character Dimitri will become, and they do set that up right at the very end. But I thought he did do a good job. Russell Crowe is kind of hilarious here because he's doing this very thick Russian accent as Nikolai, and it means that some of his dialogue is kind of incomprehensible. It really elevates what otherwise would have been a very generic gangster role. But the one who really understands the assignment is Alessandro Nivola as Rhino. Some of his his moments, man, are he has these really camp moments, are just absolutely hilarious to watch. He's clearly having the time of his life here. Which is to say, everyone else, yeah, kind of falters. I mean, I get it. The material's very weak. Not even Daniel Day-Lewis could elevate this, but when you've got Ariana DeBose, an actual Oscar winner, playing Calypso and just phoning it in, yeah, you do have to question whether she actually does need a better agent, or whether you got the likes of like Christopher Abbott playing the foreigner, who, yeah, his character's kind of pointless and doesn't really add much. So he's doing as much as the material will allow, which is to say, not a lot. I mean, from a technical perspective, it's all right. I thought Benjamin Wallfish's score was pretty good, and some of the cinematography was actually okay. Although 90% of outdoor shots reeked of green screen. Like I did not believe for 1 second that characters were actually outdoors and like these African plains or these like so these like Russian flatlands. I just saw they were them in front of like a sound stage. It really stood out. And some of the visual effects are actually okay. Like I thought the CGI blood was decent. It was fine, and actually Rhino's design was all right. The CGI to bring it to life was good, and they obviously did a mostly comic accurate job in actually bringing that design to life, as opposed to obviously the mechanized suit that Paul Giamatti wore as Rhino in Amazing Spider-Man 2. Again, it can border on being very goofy, but the CGI and design was pretty good and mostly spot on. And obviously, by the time we reach the end, big in comic book movie fashion, big final battle and ending, which sets up sequels that will never happen in typical Sony fashion. And all in all, Kraven the Hunter, it's sort of middle of the road action flick. It's not great. It has its moments, but ultimately, yeah, it's not really gonna leave an impression in the long run. Out of 10, Kraven the Hunter gets a 5. So yeah, let me know down in the comments. Have you seen Kraven? What did you think of it? Uh, are you glad the Sony Pictures universe of Marvel characters is now done? It looks to be. And yeah, what do you make of Aaron Taylor Johnson as Kraven? Let me know all that down in the comments. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you're new, and don't forget to turn on post notifications so you don't miss an upload.